It's amazing you come out tonight because it's horrible, so I do appreciate that. That's me. That's at Dillington, actually, not very far away from here. The people from Dillington are there just to throw things at me as well. So I started my beekeeping life at around about 7 or 8 years old. I was brought up in Ilford in Essex, technically. My dad worked for Sainsbury's and got great friends that had moved around the country, and we've got a great family friend who lived in Salisbury. And every summer holiday we would all get trundled off, me and my 2 brothers, in the car for a week in Salisbury to spend with John and Kate. And John was an ex-priest, and he left the priesthood and became a potter. And the other thing he'd got was these 2 hives in his back garden. And I was fascinated by these bees, just by what they were doing. And he was a very tall man, very calm spoken man. And he would say, "We'll go and see the bees." And he'd always do this. He'd go and make a cup of tea. And we'd go and sit by the bees and just watch the bees. And that's what we would do. We'd never open up a box like this. Never open them up. And he would just say, all you need to do is watch the bees to understand what's going on. And it's something that, as my beekeeping life has progressed, that I've learned, actually, I'm not really a beekeeper. I'm a hive keeper. And all I do is provide a box. And hopefully, the bees that I put in there will stay in there and they'll flourish and they'll do great things for us. So this was taken the middle of August. In my 18th year of beekeeping at Dillington, we were having a hive visit where people just like you sign up and put bee suits on and come and look at the bees. And we took some pictures anyhow. So my real beekeeping life started in 2006. I got a great opportunity with a tiny bit of land. And someone who is still a friend of mine, loosely, signed me up for a beekeeping course. And I'm not very good, as people that know me, I'm not very good at doing as I'm told. And sitting in a room full of prospective beekeepers, being told that this is how you're going to keep bees, and we're going to follow the British Beekeeping Association's way of keeping bees, and we're going to follow the system of every 7 to 10 days we're going to open the bees up, and we're going to do this and do that. And I thought after the first one, that's not what a kind of beekeeper I want to do. So I went home and I said to my then wife, I'm going to buy some bees. And she's like, okay. It's another one of those ideas, isn't it? Like the unicycle and the fire juggling, all those things. And so anyhow, I found a really great beekeeper that I'm still very good friends with. His name is Chris Harries. He is, you'll see his honey everywhere. It's Somerset honey, or Sedgemoor honey, as he used to be called. Very calm man, and I met him in a field, and I said, I want to buy a box of bees. And he said, what do you mean, a box of bees? I said, well, I want to buy bees. He said, have you got a hive? I said, yeah, I've got a hive. He said, okay. Do you know what you're doing? No. And I'd got a suit that really was no good, and I'd got a box that was no good, because there's different forms of beehives in the UK. I use national hives, which is an adaptation of the hive that you see at the back, which is a Longstreth hive, which is an American-style hive. And I'd got one of those, and the frames are a lot bigger than a national hive. Anyhow, I didn't know that. So 2 weeks later, Chris rocks up with a box of bees. We call them a nuke bee. So it's 6 frames of bees, whereas a national has got 11. Turns up, and he looks at my hive, and he says, I'll see you in a couple of weeks when you buy the right gear. Because I'd bought wax for making candles with, and the frames wouldn't fit into the hive. And he said, buy more than one hive as well, because it's not going to go well. So I learned very, very quickly the hard way. My first 2 years of beekeeping, I ended up in A&E 4 times with severe stings. On my records now, it still says I'm highly allergic to bee stings. It's not true. It's just when you're an idiot and you think that Instagram is the way forward, you follow it and you go out with a pair of shorts on and no veil on because you think the bees are listening to you. They're not. They're not. First time I did it, I didn't listen. Didn't go back to what John Pocock said to me, all you've got to do is listen. And the colony was queenless, and they were trying to re-queen. And little be known to me, they get rather angry and rather angsty. And I lifted the lid, and all of a sudden, the bees decided to have a little bit of a pop at my ankles. Just fine. And I rang the wife, and she was out, and she said, "All right, I've been stung a few times. Can you get me some Germaline?" So there's me rubbing. That's fine. The next morning, I woke up, everything was slightly bit dizzy. So A&E, and anyhow, you learn. You do learn as a beekeeper, and I think as my journey as a beekeeper has gone from following very strict rules where you go and inspect a hive every 7 days, and you're opening up the hive, and you're doing this, you're pulling out frames, to now, I will go through a hive probably once a month, if not longer, if I can get away with it, because the more we disturb the bees, we disturb that colony, and you break up their natural rhythm. And I think that life is all about a natural rhythm. It's understanding them. They're wild animals, and we put them in a box and hope that they don't get too angry. For the rest of the 40 whatever minutes we've got left, my good friend here has got a microphone he's going to throw at me when I'm running over time. We're going to do a video. Oh, we're not going to do a video. We're going to watch a video that was part of a TED talk about something called Varroa destructor, which is an invasive species that will kill a colony of bees. And it takes you through the life cycle of a bee. And we'll talk about the education side of South Street Honey, which is me, really. I currently run around about 100 hives and go up and down, height of summer about 140 and winter to about 80. We've got bees at Dillington House, or the estate. We've got bees on Sheppey's Land, in Wellington, and Thatcher's Land. I've got bees in Glastonbury now, which is very nice. Got lots of bees. I've got a bee nuke, so a yard where we grow bees, so I create my own queens. That's in Henlade. So we've got 12 different sites. 2 of them are education-based sites, and that's something that I'm very passionate about, is talking about bees, showing people bees, and getting people just to understand or experience the real kind of side of beekeeping. Tasting honey from the hive is just something very different. Feeling how warm when you touch the top of the bees, how warm they are, it's fascinating. Or being absolutely petrified of bees and then walking away because it's not your thing. We've got a therapist that we work with, people who are scared of bees, that they come to my house and we kind of experience it, kind of that kind of back and forth. It works, it's a slow process, but it's interesting. And we'll talk about bee venom therapy, which is something that's coming into the media. And at the end, we'll talk about real honey and honey adulteration, and how our supermarkets and our large suppliers are fooling us as consumers about honey. So this is a video, it's actually 10 years old, around about 10 years old, from TED Talks, but it is really quite great, and I'm going to shut up.
These bees are in my backyard in Berkeley, California. Until last year, I'd never kept bees before, but National Geographic asked me to photograph a story about them. And I decided to be able to take compelling images, I should start keeping bees myself. And as you may know, bees pollinate 1/3 of our food crops, and lately they've been having a really hard time. So as a photographer, I wanted to explore what this problem really looks like. So I'm going to show you what I found over the last year. This furry little creature is a fresh young bee halfway emerged from its brood cell. And bees right now are dealing with several different problems, including pesticides, diseases, and habitat loss. But the single greatest threat is a parasitic mite from Asia, Varroa destructor. And this pinhead-sized mite crawls onto young bees and sucks their blood. This eventually destroys a hive because it weakens the immune system of the bees, and it makes them more vulnerable to stress and disease. Now, bees are the most sensitive when they're developing inside their brood cells, and I wanted to know what that process really looks like. So I teamed up with a bee lab at UC Davis and figured out how to raise bees in front of a camera. I'm going to show you the first 21 days of a bee's life condensed into 60 seconds. This is a bee egg as it hatches into a larva. And those newly hatched larvae swim around their cells, feeding on this white goo that nurse bees secrete for them. Then their head and their legs slowly differentiate as they transform into pupae. Here's that same pupation process, and you can actually see the mites running around in the cells. Then the tissue in their body reorganizes, and the pigment slowly develops in their eyes. The last step of the process is their skin shrivels up and they sprout hair. So, you saw, as you can see halfway through that video, the mites were running around on the baby bees. And the way that beekeepers typically manage these mites is they treat their hives with chemicals. In the long run, that's bad news. So researchers are working on finding alternatives to
What
control
the
these
video
mites.
shows is how, from an egg, the egg is fed with the royal jelly, which is the white goo. The royal jelly comes from a secretion from the nurse bees. On day 3, the egg will fall over and curl over, and it will feed on that goo. Day 8, it will be a larva, and it will be sealed over with a wax capping. And then all the rest of that you saw will carry on underneath a sealed cell. There's 3 types of bees. So we have worker bees, females. There's drones, boys. And then there's the queen, the almighty queen. From laying the egg to hatching, for a queen is 16 days. From laying to hatching, for a female worker bee, it's 22 days to 23 days. And for a drone, it's 24 days. And that's all dictated by the royal jelly and the way that those larvae are treated and looked after. And it's fascinating because those eggs came from the original queen. And the hive is deciding, the colony, the being is deciding whether they're going to be females or workers, or even indeed queens. And when a hive needs to reproduce, or we all know it as swarming. Everyone goes, oh, there's a swarm of bees. It's all part of reproduction. It's just how that colony is expanding and growing. And if you're a beekeeper or a hive keeper, quite often, if you're not giving enough space for those bees, they will swarm. They will want to reproduce. There's no more room for them. So what will happen is there'll be a conversation between the whole of the colony. Scout bees will go out and they'll find the most important places, the best places. Going back to the hive, they'll have a chat and they'll all look at each other's sites to see which is going to be the best. And then they'll decide where they're going to end up and they'll have plans to get there. Bees fly within a 3-mile radius of point X in any direction, and they'll always come back to point X. So once the new home is decided, it could be your chimney, it could be the side of your car, it could be anywhere. I mean, there's some lovely spaces in here. Bees will choose the nicest place, somewhere dark, warm, somewhere safe. The old queen, the original queen, and half of that colony will go to that new place. They may stop off somewhere, which is quite often when you'll see things in paper or social media, there's a swarm of bees, or you'll see beekeepers out trying to rescue bees or coo them down. It's because they're resting. quite often as beekeepers, we want to catch those swarms because they're free bees. They're easy to get. They're not always easy because quite often they don't want to do what we want them to do. But they will often go to somewhere else. It's often a stopping place. At the same time, the reason they've left that colony is because at day 8, the queen cell is sealed. So they know that there's a future for that colony that's been left behind. And that's where they'll go. Day 16, queens hatch. Yay! Quite often you'll find in a hive that hasn't been touched by a hive keeper, a beekeeper, what you want to call us, there'll be more than one queen cell, and what will happen is they'll all hatch at roughly the same time, and they'll fight to the death. Survival of the fittest. And their queens will and do sting each other. After 10 days or so, that queen, newly hatched, will be ready to fly, and she'll go out and mate. She'll mate with probably 10 drone worker bees, and once those drone worker bees mate, they die. The queen hopefully comes back to the original hive, and she'll start laying. And at the height of summer, the queen will lay around about 1,500 eggs every single day. Every single day. And she needs to do that to keep up with the numbers in the hive. So in the box that you've got behind you, height of summer, you'll have around about 60,000 bees in there. And she'll keep on churning out, because the lifetime or the life cycle of a bee, once it's born, it doesn't go straight out to go and collecting pollen and honey. It has different jobs to do. First job is it taught how to be a cleaner, and it will clean. You saw the bees going around cleaning, that's the first job. And it will be taught different jobs. It won't be till the end of its life that it will be allowed out to go and fly. So it will learn how to be a beekeeper. It will learn how to be an undertaker bee. It will clean the dead bees out. It will learn how to process the nectar that the flying bees have brought back. Bees have a separate honey tummy that they pass the honey or the nectar to each other. And that helps add in enzymes and the bacteria and all those different things that make honey taste great for us. And when it gets to the right consistency, they'll put it in the bottom of a cell, and then they'll dehydrate it. They'll whiff their wings to dehydrate it. And honey goes from whatever percentage of moisture it is in the air to about 18%, and that's the ideal. When it gets to that percent, they'll seal it over. Life of a bee is very short during the summer. 6 weeks, they say. It's not very long, and that's why the queen needs to keep up. So the queens in the natural environment, maybe 6-7 years. In a commercial environment, well, 3 or 4 years at the best. We try and keep our hives and our queens viable. If the queen isn't any good, the colony will decide that they will replace her, and they will kill their queens, and they will reproduce. So it's quite a harsh environment. It's quite a selfless environment being a bee, because you're controlled by each other. There's no one person making a decision. It's quite cool, really. Boys have the hardest time, I have to say, because the boys are there for only one thing, and once that one thing is done, and the end of summer is coming, and food is getting a bit kind of precious, all the boys are kicked out. All the drones will be kicked out, and the girls will quite literally drag them out, and then they won't let them back in, because the guard bees will not let them back in, because they're a drain on sources. Because all the boys are going to do, they can't collect pollen, they can't collect nectar, they're just going to eat. So they're no good, so they get kicked out. Okay, so threats to bees. It's quite important, actually, that as just a general public, people in the world, we understand the threats to the bees. Bees help pollinate 35% of the food we eat. It's not just honeybees that do that, because wasps, believe it or not, they're the horriblest thing that God created. They're actually the best pollinators because they don't care where they go. They'll just go anywhere. Hornets, love them. Frighten the life out of you because they're like helicopters coming in. But they play a role in our ecosystem. European hornets will eat honeybees, but not in the kind of realms that is going to kill them. Bumblebees, great fluffy bumblebee. This is a red-tailed bumblebee. One of the dying out bumblebees. Bumblebees aren't like honeybees. They like to have little nests. It looked like someone stuck popcorn together. And there'll be about 30 bumblebees all in that nest. And they'll go in places that you don't want them, often in the ground. Bumblebees don't last for very long. They'll last for a summer. By the time it gets to August and the days are drawing shorter and it's getting colder, the queen bumblebee will start to think about hibernation, and that colony will create more bumblebees that will go out and mate, and then they will hibernate. Honeybees don't hibernate because what they've done over time in evolution is they've worked out how to create honey, which is their source of food, so they don't need to hibernate. Wasps are the same as bumblebees. When it gets to the end of the season, they will find more queens. They'll create more queens who will go out and mate, and then those queens will go and hibernate. Places like your shed, the edges of hives. They love those because they're nice and warm. They're not a risk to us. Wasps get angry at the end of summer because they're running out of food. It's the same as bumblebees. They'll start to get a little bit angsty. Biggest risk to honeybees are idiots like me, not necessarily me, are humans. We're the biggest risk to honeybees because we like to control things. We've got weeds, we like to spray it. Don't do that. There's certain chemicals, neoconides is the technical term for them. What they do is they break down the bee's nervous system. America is a huge problem, and it's part of a bigger story in America, things like that. Great farmers don't use things like that. Not putting you on the spot. But it's crop spraying that will often interfere with, especially wild colonies. Hedgerows, how they're being cut down, how our environment and our wildlife is being changed. And it's not just for bumblebees. We saw the varroa mite. Varroa mite came into the UK, I think it was 1956. I know there is another beekeeper in the room. Won't correct me. But it first started to come into the UK in about 1956. It changes the way, basically, it will adjust the bees as they're being born, or they're in that larval stage, and you'll have something called a winged deformed virus. And that eventually, there will be too many bees that have that virus and that effect, and then they won't be able to fly, they won't be able to feed, etc., etc., etc. So the colony will collapse. There are other things that affect us or our bee colonies, especially as beekeepers and commercial beekeepers or semi-commercial beekeepers. The biggest one for us is not varroa, because now, through years of treating them with chemicals, there's a new way of kind of thinking about it. Let the bees work it out themselves. They've been here since the dinosaur times. Why are we kind of putting chemicals into their system that they don't really want? So for me as a beekeeper, I don't treat my hives. It's about keeping those colonies strong, letting them be bees. Don't interrupt them too long. Don't break that kind of seal and that boundary of that colony. Let them work it out. They do. You'll see the bees when they're on the frames, and there's a hive at the back that's got frames in. You can have a look at it, and we'll talk about that later in the break. If the bees know that there's mites in those cells, they will open them out and they'll pull out larvae. And that's their way of controlling it. So we don't need to do anything with that, really. European foul brood is affecting more bees in the UK as every year goes on, and there's little hot spots. It's a bacteria that gets into the intestine of the bee, and it makes them very, very poorly. It's a notifiable disease. There's two, European foul brood and American foul brood, in bees that we have to notify. The National Bee Unit, they're like the bee police. They scare the absolutely bejesus out of me. And every year in Wellington, we have a hot spot of European foul brood, and every year the bee inspector sends me an email that I try and ignore. And then she rings me up and says, "We're going to have a look at your bees." And it's like your mum coming and inspecting your kitchen. Because you don't want your mum coming and looking in your kitchen and going, oh, your knives and forks are the wrong way around, or whatever. Bee inspectors are part of our everyday life as a commercial beekeeper. And they're great, they're really great. And I do joke, they do scare the bejesus out of me, though. And what they'll do is you remember COVID, how long COVID was, so we have a PC test that will tell you if you've got European foulbrood. There's different ways of telling it. You can do a pinprick. You can tell by the way that the cell looks. American foulbrood, there's no guessing where that came from, is there? The first thing you notice about American foulbrood is different to European foulbrood. European doesn't have a smell. American foulbrood, oh my word, you know it, you've got that in a hive. And the way of treating American foulbrood, because it's a spore-forming bacteria, is you will burn the hive. It's horrible to see, and I've luckily never had it, and I've not had European foulbrood, despite having bees in Wellington, which is a hot spot. American foulbrood is treated with petrol and a match. Because it's spore forming, you can't use the kit anymore, and you've got to be very careful, and quite often it will be a whole apiary, so it could be 20 hives, so it could be quite destructive. Luckily, not had it, and there's insurance for it. European foulbrood, there's different ways of doing it. You don't have to kill the bees. You can do something called a shook swarm, so you shake the bees away from where the original hive was, so you get rid of the original hive. You do actually destroy the frames, but you can clean the hive. And any bees that are worth keeping will come back to point zero, because remember, they'll fly within a 3-mile zone. And there's a rule in beekeeping that you can move your hive 3 foot from where it was originally, or more than 3 miles, because they'll come back to that original point. 3 foot, they'll kind of work out where it is. More than 3 miles. Colony collapse disorder doesn't affect us in the UK yet. Massive problem in America, massive problem in Australia and New Zealand. And if you read into it, there's a lot to do with movement of bees, because in America especially, they move bees from crop to crop to crop to crop to crop. Same in Australia, and they'll follow the crops around. Their bees are collapsing, and when you watch videos of it, there's no sign on the front entrance, which often, if bees will die, the bees will sort them out and eject them. But these colonies will just collapse overnight. And they don't really know why. There's lots of research going into it, blah, blah, blah. But it's actually, I think, is to do with how you look after those bees, how you're mistreating them. Because they go on these huge lorries, you'll see the videos everywhere, and it's horrible. And they're moved from crop to crop to crop to crop, and they're not treated very well. And then honey harvest comes, and it's not nice. The other big threat that you may have heard about, and we have a video coming up, not just yet, but in a bit, is about the Asian hornet. Anyone heard of the Asian hornet?
I think it's called the yellow leg.
Oh. See, he said he wasn't going to say anything. See, here we go. He wasn't going to say anything. Yes, there's different words for it. Yellow-legged hornet, Asian hornet. I've been lucky enough, I'm going to say, to see them in the real flesh in Greece. And they weren't that frightening until you get close. And they can be mean little buggers. The European hornet will be around about so long. An Asian hornet is a lot smaller. There is a video we're going to watch in a bit. It's a real risk to the UK. Guernsey and Jersey are really affected. Italy has got great problems. France has got great problems. And what these hornets do is they predate on the bees, and they will wipe out colonies. They'll find the weaker ones, and they will just destruct them. They will rip off the head, and all thereafter is the protein in their thorax of the bee. And they can destroy a hive in a matter of days. And once those Asian hornets are locked onto that colony, not a lot you can do about it. And we don't want that over here in the UK. There is an app. Everyone likes an app. You'll see it in the national press. If you see an Asian hornet, or you think you've seen one, take a picture of it, put it on the app, and it goes to somewhere. And then the men in bee suits, and the women in bee suits, will turn up and go, no, it's a European hornet. Never be afraid of taking a picture of it and sending it in. That's all I'm going to say, because numbers, they're coming in over from the channel. European hornets can't fly that very far. The yellow-legged hornets, it's all about learning. I'm sure he's got something in his bag to throw later. Yellow-legged hornets that were known as the Asian hornet can fly for about 26 to 27 miles. So they have the ability to fly over the channel. They don't, what they do is they hop onto easy cargo, lorries, boats, these things. Kent has got quite a big problem. We've had Asian hornets in Dorset. We've had them in the north. We don't have a big problem here in Somerset yet, but it will happen. You'll see more about this in the press in the coming weeks and months, because it is a huge risk. The biggest risk to bees, though, are humans. South Street honey is me. It's also, she's not in this, it's my youngest daughter as well, Phoebe, who 2 years ago wouldn't go anywhere near a hive. Beautiful girl, long hair, always smells of flowers. Of course, bees like flowers, so whenever Phoebe got out of the car, anywhere near a hive, she would be swamped by bees. So for years, she would just sit in the car and go, I'm not going near them. And then the bees would get in the car, and it was then getting a problem. For some reason, I don't know what, maybe age, or maybe me never shutting up about it. Phoebe is my greatest help. In the limited company world, she's actually the financial officer. Haven't told her that, though. But yeah. So, South Street honey, it started off as me with a couple of hives learning how to nearly kill myself, to having this whole curiosity about bees and people being curious about the bees. We used to have a pub, and that's where the bees first were, and people would stand and just watch them, which was great. And then I got another bit of land in Wellington and an opportunity to keep bees, and I grew, and then once you start growing, it doesn't stop. Bees are fascinating, and us as human beings want to learn more about them. Very lucky, 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, Lindsay put a post up on the old Facebook. You want to put some bees on our land? Great relationship with Dillington Estate, really great. I'm very, very lucky to have a beautiful spot, and it is a beautiful spot, on their land, and a great relationship with people like Lindsay. And then things grow. 2 years ago, we got a great spot that's it's called Little Boots. It's a nursery, but it's also a home education site. So we can then take small people with a big people that's in charge to go and see bees. And then that spurns on more conversation. And then we take bigger people out and talk about bees. And we'll lift the lid and it goes silent. The desire to learn about bees and our nature is naturally in us. Just because they're in a box doesn't mean we can't learn about them. There's lots of beekeepers that will take you out to see the bees. There's lots of companies that will take you to see bees. I'm very lucky that we've got different bits of land that we can do that on. Education is phenomenally important with the future of our insects and our bees and our honeybees. I go into schools. I've got a Perspex hive, a fabulous bit of kit. My girlfriend killed me. She didn't kill me. When you look at the cost of beekeeping, it's not a cheap hobby. And this beautiful Perspex thing was £120. I didn't think about it then, but you can take it in and people can see the bees. Really, really great observation hive. The next part of South Street Honey is commercial side. I finally finished a degree that I've been doing for far too long in environmental social governance, all about the reasons why we put bees on land and what it can do for your business, especially people like Langdon's in the middle of Bridgewater. I've had bees on their land for just over 12 months now, and I was approached by their transport manager, and I knew him through different means, and he said, "You still keeping bees?" I said, "Yeah, just a couple." He said, fancy putting some on our land? I said, yeah. He says, we'll pay you for it. I said, I don't need to do that. He says, you don't know what we want yet. So part of the commercial side is about education. So we take big, burly lorry drivers and we put them in bee suits and we go and visit the hives. They've now built, where the bees are, 2 benches so that the truckers can watch the bees with a cup of tea. So going back to me being 7 years old, with John watching the bees, and every time I go there, I don't even get anywhere near the bees because they're asking me questions. And then keep on saying, can you leave suits for us so we can go into... No, you're not going by yourselves because I know what's going to happen. We then link into things like how the bees will indirectly offset all the diesel that the lorries are using. It's a very kind of loose connection, but their marketing department think it's great. And then we take a spinner and some honey out of the hive and spin it in someone's office, which is great because the office gets covered in sticky stuff. And then we put it in jars and they label it and then they give it to people. It's great. It carries on going. Well, what that does is that then helps pay for the education side. The environment side fits into kind of the commercial side a little bit. And then domestic, the domestic market. People that want bees in their back garden or their field or their whatever. So part of South Street is putting bees into your back garden. It's always a multiple of 2 hives. But you might have a long, lovely garden, not like mine in South Street in Taunton. I mean, the garden's no longer than the wall to wall here. Great neighbours, that's all I'm going to say. Very understanding, and they get honey every now and again to say thank you. Especially when there's a hive swarming, and I get a knock on the door going, are these your bees? You know, they're not mine, because they've got many numbers on. They're not mine. Very, very understanding neighbours. But the domestic side, people want to have bees. And it doesn't have to be a great, long, drawn-out thing. We can put bees in your garden, you can look after them, we can teach you, we can come away. It's the same for the commercial and the environment. We've got a great new customer, which we'll talk a little bit about. I'm not allowed to say who they are, but they're a chain of retirement homes, that's what we'll say. They're exploring apitherapy and how honeybees can help, not necessarily improve, but give something back to your health. A lot of research going on about the air that bees create and the warmth and the vibration, which is around about 200 megahertz, and how that heals us from the inside. In Russia, they have these houses that have got bees in, and this is what we put onto these sites. And the hives are underneath, and the houses sit on top of them, and you breathe in the bee air, and you smell it all. In the Ukraine, they have masks that fit on top of hives, so you can breathe in the air. Children with asthma, it's recommended for them. And another thing that you'll see in the media, if you search for it, there is some great results coming from it, is bee therapy or bee venom therapy. There's different forms, but one of it is you repeatedly sting yourself with a bee, but it has been proven loosely to help treat Lyme's disease. There's also some great results coming about how bee venom therapy, or the bee venom, because it has something called melatonin in it, how it's attacking cancer cells, which is really, really interesting. And it needs a lot more money and a lot more research, but it's something we've had for how many years? Thousands and thousands of years. The Egyptians used to have bee houses, and they would float them up and down the Nile for the wealthy to take part in. The Victorians used to do it, and we've lost touch in that. This is Agent Hornets. Yellow legs. And it has a black thorax on the back. And this fourth segment, very important. Yeah, right, very quickly. Asian hornets, download the app. Watch it in the newspapers, it will be everywhere because we are properly worried about it. Honey, great byproduct of bees. Evolution helped them decide that they needed something to survive the winters rather than hibernating. Oh, honey, brilliant. We love honey as consumers. We can't get enough of it. Something that has been talked about for quite a while is adulteration of honey. And it's only with things like social media and more conversation that we realise how big a problem this is. In the UK, only 14%, and it's ridiculous, only 14% of the honey sold in the UK comes from the UK. It's ridiculous. Ridiculous because we import cheap rubbish. It is rubbish, and there's some rubbish at the back for you to try. During the interval, I'd like everyone to try it, and then when we come back for questions about bees, we'll see who can spot the real honey. Honey is imported from all around the world, and just because it might come and it might say it's natural honey, there's different ways that beekeepers or manufacturers can manipulate that. One of the great ways that Chinese do it, or the Chinese, they will have vats of sugar water or syrup right next to the honeybees, and then the honeybees will go and drink that and turn it into honey. It's not honey. It's fermented sugar water. But at the back of bottles, it will say, so this is suitable for vegetarians. Oh, lovely. A blend of honey from more than one country. Am I suspicious yet? I'm slightly suspicious. It's also a blend of non-EU honey. There's no technical law definition of what honey is yet, but it's coming. It's going to come. I love this next bit because it's never going to happen to this product. Over time, your honey may crystallize. Should this occur? It's not going to because it's not honey. Honey is made up of two different types of sugars. It's fructose and glucose. And what happens is when honey gets cold or colder, the sugars are fighting against each other, and that's why it crystallizes. If your honey does crystallize, fab, because it's honey. Yeah? You know it's in honey. Pop it in a jar of warm water. Pop it by the radiator, not on it, by it. It'll go runny again. Enjoy it in its crystallized form. And then they tell you what to do with it. It's not honey. This is one of them there. Buy your honey from a local beekeeper before they run out. That's all I'm going to say, because I've run out. Which is not great. I don't take a lot of honey off of my bees because I want them to be bees. I want them to be happy, and we're dictated by how the season goes. The best performing apiary, I'm not saying it because they're sat at the back of the room, but was Dillington. And it's purely down to the planting and the way that the land is managed. I can't put it any more than that. Every single hive produced honey. I won't take the honey off unless there's more than a super, which is 20 kilos worth. So if they don't produce more than 20 kilos, I won't take it off. So very small batch. If you're that lucky, you get honey. If I don't know you, probably won't. I'm not very commercially minded, which is probably one of my downfalls, and I work a lot so I can buy more boxes. The thing about honey is understand where it's come from, question where it's come from. If it's from the supermarket, look at the back. Oh, the bag is really sticky. That's got another one. This one I think actually is very sticky. I think this was about £1.50. This was from Lidl 2 days ago because they got a Greek promotion on. Brilliant. It was £3.99. You'll be able to tell which one it is because it tastes like golden syrup. But again, it's questioning, and it says on the back, it's still suitable for vegetarians. Produced in Greece using Greek honey. Yeah. why. I'm not necessarily sure about it. The other thing it actually says is quite interesting, is not suitable for infants under 12 years old. 12 months old, not 12 years. And that's because bees naturally have botulism in their honey gut. And if anyone knows about botulism, it can be quite deadly, really. Only in large numbers, but it's always wise not to. So, have a look at the honey. There's some sticks. Remember the one you think is the real honey, and we'll talk about it in about 20 minutes.